if at the beginning of their relationship, he had said the same exact truth, which is, I'm afraid of outgrowing you, which is kind of that truth pebble, if you will. If he had said that in this version, which is, honestly, you're not growth oriented at all, and I literally can't stand to be around people who aren't growth oriented.
You're probably hanging on to a past version of your relationship. And if you don't express the pebbles while they're small, they will become bullets, and bullets can hurt people. And eventually those can become cannons. And the analogy here is, don't shoot a cannon at a rabbit. It's effective, but then there's no rabbit left.
Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals, welcome back to the Conscious Couples podcast. We have an awesome episode for you today, episode number 80 episodes. Wowza. It is, are you sending off truth pebbles or truth cannons? So this is something that Emilia and I use often. As always, thank you so much to Next Level Podcast Solutions for producing this show, and I believe 47 others now. It's crazy. It's growing. As always, love, what is your intention?
My intention is for our podcast listeners, community members, conscious couples, and conscious singles to help deliver and use this effective communication tool to express your truth more vulnerably, and use this podcast episode as a stepping stone in the right direction to expressing truth.
So we have a Relationship Talks event. Actually, this will have already happened by the time this episode launches. It was last Thursday. And when we were prepping for the presentation, we came across this concept that we've been using in our relationship and outside of our relationship with other relationships a ton, which is the idea of truth bullets. So let's unpack that.
Okay. So I'm also going to encourage all of our listeners to click the link in the show notes too, because there's going to be a visual that we're going to share with every single one of you so that you can have a visual while we walk you through this. So the concept around truth bullets is essentially, how can we deliver our truth over to the other person? What we will have talked about in the event that's coming tomorrow when we're recording this, and last Thursday, like Alan had mentioned, when you're listening to this episode launch, is that people struggle in general to get their truth over to the other person because it's uncomfortable. There's fear underneath it. And so truth pebbles, truth bullets, truth cannons are expressions of your truth in a way in which is working within your comfort zone. So, for example, a truth pebble is a very small version of your truth. It's still your truth, but it's delivering it in a way that's not going to hurt a ton when the recipient receives it.
The good visual for this, sorry to interrupt you, love.
Okay.
The good visual for this is if I have a pebble in my hand and I kind of throw it over to Emilia and she catches it. That's a truth pebble.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then we'll get into an example with a client.
We should do that first.
Okay.
Probably.
So do this first. Okay. So we have a client and they're amazing. They've done Relationship Talks coaching for a solid 6+ months now, and they're absolutely crushing it. But when they first got into Relationship Talks coaching, they really struggled. And one in particular, the relationship, the individual in the relationship that was really growing was extremely growth oriented, was really afraid. Their uncomfortable truth was that they were going to outgrow their intimate partner. And so they were kind of struggling around delivering that truth, because it's like, well, and if you're a listener of this show, you know, it's kind of hard. Like, can you kind of grow? Like if your partner is the one that's not growing maybe as fast or as deep or is into growth as much as you are. So this partner had come to us and said, hey, I'm really struggling in this regard. I'm afraid to outgrow my partner. How can we, using Relationship Talks coaching, really get those truths across to my other partner while she kind of comes up in her personal development journey? So if you will, a little bit of a truth pebble getting delivered to this partner was, honey, I would love for you to join me on a Relationship Talks coaching call.
And then on the Relationship Talks coaching, this person gathered much more courage and also much more certainty and security. And in the Relationship Talks coaching has slowly sort of brought his partner to the table of, I didn't know how to tell you this, but I was fearful that I was going to outgrow you. I didn't want to sound arrogant, and I didn't want you to feel bad about yourself. But now that we're here in this Relationship Talks coaching, I do want you to know that was my fear. So what started off as a truth little pebble, hey, do you want to join this Relationship Talks coaching call? That if the other person was deeply insecure, might have been like, well, what do you think we need coaching? Do you not think I'm growth oriented? If that person didn't have humility and courage and self-belief, they probably would have had a really hard time hearing that. And so if you've ever found yourself tiptoeing around your partner, even with truth pebbles, what happens is you suppress the pebbles and eventually those pebbles become bullets.
Yeah.
But if you suppress the bullets, eventually those bullets become cannons. And so I have a situation that I'll share briefly where I had a team member where for a long time, he and I were not expressing our full truth to each other because we were hanging on to a past version of our relationship.
So like truth pebbles, you guys weren't expressing those? Or truth cannons? Oh, correct.
And so me and this person, I was CEO, he was COO. We had a certain relationship at one point that we were still kind of hanging on to. And we didn't want that relationship to change and to evolve. So we were kind of not really sharing our full truth with one another. And all of this was unconscious at the time. So anyways, eventually we suppressed. The pebbles eventually became bullets. The bullets eventually became cannons. And then when all the truth kind of came out and all the stuff that was being brushed under the rug, we lift the rug up and realize it's all dust under there. We have to kind of air that rug out, so to speak, and then the dust gets all over everybody. And that's kind of what we're talking about here, which is if you're out there right now and you struggle to express your truth, number one, you're not alone. There's probably insecurity in you and insecurity in your partner. You're probably hanging on to a past version of your relationship. And if you don't express the pebbles while they're small, they will become bullets, and bullets can hurt people. And eventually those can become cannons. And the analogy here is don't shoot a cannon at a rabbit. It's effective, but then there's no rabbit left. And there's nothing to eat in that analogy. So, sweetheart, I know we don't have a ton of time here. I want us to unpack this a little bit, but I also want us to slow the tempo down here a little bit just so that we can lean into it.
So one of the things that I want to help our listeners kind of gauge their intuition with, every single time you have an interaction with someone, you likely experience your truth bullets after you get away from that conversation. So what a truth bullet feels like is when you go into a conversation with your intimate partner and then afterwards, you know, those things that the thoughts that are coming up, it's like, I wish I would have said this, or maybe you didn't express yourself to that degree, or like maybe there's a narrative that's playing like you coward, you didn't say XYZ, right? So there's usually an intuitive, conscious voice that is coming into your head that after you have an engagement with someone, maybe your intimate partner or a team member in this case, always afterwards, there's always this truth bullet that's like stuck into your heart. And it's
it can be on the other end where it's like, that's not what I meant.
Yes.
A lot of that happens of, I really wish I had clarified what I meant by that.
Right. Or maybe that wasn't delivered in the way, say in the actual situation with your intimate partner, you shared what you thought was a truth pebble or you thought was a truth bullet. And then it's like, you notice it didn't land in the way in which you intended for it to be received. That happens all the time.
You realize, honestly, now that I've unpacked it, that's not really my truth anymore. I realize now that what I thought was true is not accurate for me. And so this gets really wonky. You're going to crawl through the mud to get to the higher ground. That's the analogy.
But that's, and it's such a beautiful analogy because of the fact that like it happens typically, like we always say hindsight's 20/20. It usually happens after the engagement or after the truth is expressed or our perception or our version of the truth. Once we believe it's expressed, we then kind of realize, oh, okay, maybe that wasn't the actual truth that I tried to get there. So truth bullets are that when you have those moments where it's like, oh, I tried to get the truth out, but the truth, there's a little bit more to that story that I either need to clarify or I want to make sure that I show up in integrity with my values and how I aspire to communicate. So truth bullets can also be like if you delivered a truth that was maybe like it came out like a truth cannon where you delivered it and it was so aggressive. So going back to this relationship talks client, if at the beginning of their relationship he had said the same exact truth, which is I'm afraid of outgrowing you, which is kind of that truth pebble, if you will. If he had said that in this version, which is honestly, you're not growth oriented at all. And I literally can't stand to be around people who aren't growth oriented. Mm-hmm. That's the same kind of, if you will, essence of truth. But the way in which it's delivered, the approach of the delivery is where we're talking about the difference between truth cannon, truth bullet, and truth pebble. And if he had expressed it in that way, his truth bullet that might have come out of that conversation would be like, man, that was really unfair. That was really unkind. That was extremely emotionally charged truth, where now that the dust has settled, if you will, or the emotions have settled, this is really the truth that's shining through. And it's maybe a little bit less aggressive than that truth in terms of the way in which it was delivered.
And every single time we express a truth, even Emilia and I right now on this episode, after this episode, we're going to reflect, and we were either over or under what the actual truth is.
Yeah.
It's either going to be, wow, I really wish I had driven that point home a little harder. Or it's going to be, you know what? That was probably not the intensity that was accurate to the truth. And so this is a spectrum 0 to 10. How intensely are you expressing the truth? If you suppress truth long enough, it's going to come out and blow up the volcano. Mm-hmm. That's a truth cannon.
Yeah.
And in this analogy, a cannonball has a lot of gunpowder, and the gunpowder is kind of like the stuff you brush under the rug, whereas a pebble, there's no gunpowder required. You just throw it over.
Hi, my name is Jason Blackstock, and this is my wife, Lisa. We got connected with Alan and Emilia a few months ago through friends, and we were trying to look for ways to strengthen our relationship.
And right away, we just noticed with Alan and Emilia how they made us feel so calm, and like everything that they did with us was gentle, and it felt so like we could let our guard down right away. And that was something that allowed us to open up and just get closer so quickly. So
yeah, I felt it was very easy to connect with them, and their intuition for our situation was very surprising to me. Both past and present, they just knew us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they picked up on things that we didn't even think they would. They just, even in our mannerisms and the way we would look at each other at certain points in the conversation, it was just really cool to feel like they understood us. And it really gave us all the tools that we needed to work on us when we weren't talking directly to them. So we had like homework to do and things to work on, and it really elevated our relationship in big ways. And I think we're both really excited to keep working with Alan and Emilia, because you're never done working on your relationship. And I just feel like that is, if we're good, then the rest of our world is good with our children and our 4 kids. So
yeah, we're very grateful that we met Alan and Emilia and are looking forward to the future.
And so the idea here is, in your intimate relationship, try as hard as you can to identify the pebbles while they're pebbles, and then be proactive and say, sweetheart, what's a good example where I've done that with you? Oh, okay. Right before this episode, I had expressed to Emilia, sweetheart, we don't have a ton of time. I don't like doing rushed podcast episodes. Yeah. Do you mind if we prep for the next one instead? And then you had shared so I sent my pebble your way. Mm-hmm. And then you had sent another pebble my way of, I would really rather just get it done. I think we can do it. I actually came up with an episode topic that I think would be really good. And I said, what was it? And you said truth bullets, because we were just preparing for our next Relationship Talks event. And that's where all this came up. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? Absolutely. I think that would be a really good one. I do think we're both prepared for that. But even right now, as we are both a little bit rushed, that's why. Yeah. We have a lot to do in a very short amount of time, but we want to make sure that we get this out. And so what are your truth pebbles? What, if you are tiptoeing around your partner, what's the insecurity that you're tiptoeing around? Do they have a delicate sensibility? Are they also afraid that you're going to outgrow them? Mm-hmm. If they are deeply insecure, most likely it's going to be really hard to bring your truth to them. But if you don't bring your truth to them in the form of pebbles, you have to understand that eventually it's going to be cannonballs. Either that or you're going to completely avoid them. We've all had those friendships that just, we sailed away. The truth was never expressed. And still to this day, that other person doesn't really know what happened, or you don't really know what happened.
Yeah.
And in reality, it's because the truth pebbles were never given along the way.
And I think that a lot of people have fear of like when you bring up a truth that's going to drive you apart. And that very well might be the case. And we'll have mentioned this in our relationship talks event. Very well might be the case. But what if it could drive you closer together in you expressing your truth? So what if? That's a really beautiful what if to consider, because if you're just considering what's to be lost by delivering your truth, you're never really going to deliver it. And you're never going to feel expressed. You're never really going to feel like you're living in your authentic version of yourself. And so considering what is there to be gained when you express your truth, it could really drive you and your partner, you and your friend, you and whoever a lot closer. I know for me growing up a lot, I didn't really realize that a lot of insecurity was a big thing. And so I was out here delivering truth cannons to everyone and all my partners and destroying relationships. And I always wondered to myself, like, why can no one handle the truth? It's because of whatever delicate sensibility that they did have or whatever insecurity that I was unaware of. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't fair to them. It wasn't fair of me, because that didn't have me think outside of myself. And so I was out here delivering truth cannons. There was no bunny rabbits left. And then I was reflecting, okay, how can I be more collaborative in the way in which I express my truth? Because I don't want to be on the complete other end of people pleasing, which I know a lot of our listeners can struggle with, which is I have such a big truth cannon here, and I'm so concerned about what other people will think of me, or I'm so concerned about this not driving us together because I'm so afraid of losing my partner, that we end up people pleasing and diluting our truth and chameleonizing ourselves, or the way in which we're delivering our truth, that we're like not in the truth that we deliver to our partners.
We don't know who we are anymore.
Not at all. And so there is a beautiful spectrum that we can all kind of try out, but you never really know what end of the spectrum you are on. So my challenge for our listeners would be kind of reflect upon the way in which you're delivering your truth. How much, or 0 to 10, how much are you showing up in your truth? How much do you feel as though you're showing up in your truth when it comes to your intimate partner? The second question is, what do you feel like you typically are delivering? And this is where you can kind of look at how other people have received it. So do you feel like you're typically delivering the truth cannons? And whenever you deliver your truth, do you feel as though it shatters the person that you're talking to? You observe that? Or do you feel as though you're maybe on the other end, which is I'm literally only delivering truth pebbles and I feel suppressed by that. So I'm never really upping the notch, if you will, to truth bullets. And maybe that's where you can begin. But it's beautiful to get a baseline, and so important for all of us to understand and have that level of self-awareness. What are we typically going to? Like for me, for example, it used to be just truth cannons. Now, by developing this skill set, I have the ability, which all of our listeners are capable of figuring out what is the right level of truth for the other person and you. It's not a this or that, this person or me. It's how can we integrate my truth with their ability to receive the truth?
The way that you talk to a second grader has to be different than the way you speak to a 40-year-old, because the second grader has a more delicate sensibility. They're younger, less is expected of them. And your partner has an emotional maturity age. And if their emotional maturity is 25, then they can handle 25-year-old truth. If it's 35, they can handle 35-year-old truth. If it's like Emilia, who's 84, genuinely, you're a wise old soul. So she can handle, her emotional maturity is 60s, 70s, 80s. And so I don't have to be as delicate. You know, we were doing a presentation earlier. I was like, yeah, that slide's a real piece of shit. And that is a pebble for her. But if I said that to someone who's insecure about their presentation skills, right, that's not going to land as well. So you got to know who you're talking to. You got to know your audience. And to circle back to the original clients that we were talking about, he brought her to relationship talks. Now she's flourishing and growing. The truth pebbles that he brought her were constructive, and now they grew together. And if that person had continued to suppress their truth, they would have grown apart instead of grown together. So what if your fear of the truth breaking you up is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you're so afraid of being broken up by the truth that you don't tell the truth, and then eventually the canon blows up the relationship.
Happens all the time.
Happens all the time. And I know that I've been there in past relationships for sure. If I could go back and give myself a piece of advice, it would be, Alan, share your truth when you feel it. Frustration is the achiever's emotion. Yes, you're frustrated. You have high standards in everything. You're not just frustrated with your partner, you're frustrated with yourself. What is that frustration trying to tell you? That's a signal that's trying to say something is being suppressed here. There's something you want to share. There's something you want to express. And fortunately, I have a partner who wants all of the truth and then some in all the forms, even canons. No. But that's all we've got for you today. Anything you want to add before we go?
No, the only thing I would add is just friendly reminder, if you're a visual learner or if you're open to it, there is a digital asset in the show notes. So please feel free to click on that. And we highly encourage this. You know, it's a beautiful experience. I'm saying beautiful a lot. It's a really beautiful experience, though, truly, like to be able to live in your truth and not let that fear that you're saying, babe, sabotage all your relationships. I am at a place now in my life to where I'm able to express my truth, whether it be truth bullets, truth pebbles, or truth cannons, to the people that I love the most. And I feel just like so expressed. And I don't have to hide parts of me anymore. And I remember so much of my life that was very much the case, because how I interpreted the world, a lot of people around me couldn't experience it in that regard or didn't want to.
Well, what would happen is you'd suppress your pebbles, you'd hammer a cannon, then you'd get stuck in the shame.
Yeah.
Because that's not, you don't want to hurt people.
I don't want to hurt the people.
And then you'd suppress again until eventually another cannon. I did the same thing. So
I think we all do.
That's the cycle we should break.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we all do. And it's because of the fact that we're not taught these things when we're really young. So we hope that you can use this episode to bring it into your relationship, intimate relationship, and really help you be more expressed. So we want to welcome you to Relationship Talks. We want to welcome you to Relationship Talks events. I don't believe we actually determined our next Relationship Talk event. So stay tuned on our next episode. At the very end, we'll tell you what that is going to be. And the registration will be open in the next episode. So you can click the next episode in the show notes. What we'll do, love,
is we'll figure it out and we'll have the production team put the link in the notes. So if you're curious as to what the next Relationship Talks virtual event will be, you can click the link in the show notes. You can register for that and the title will pop right up.
Perfect. And that is always the third Thursday of every single month at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we hope to see you there. It would be so amazing to see you there and connect into this virtual live free community, getting around people that also really want to improve their relationships, improve their communication skills, and just overall improve. So we hope to see you there.
Also, if you want to try out Relationship Talks coaching, the first one is free. We do a free one every single Saturday. The link to book on our calendar will be in the show notes. If you struggle to express your truth pebbles, your truth bullets, your truth cannons with your partner, that's a really good place to express yourself toward us so that your partner does not feel attacked. That's one of the benefits of it, genuinely, is because you're talking to us, not at your partner. It ends up being this beautiful triangle of truth telling. It's quite beautiful. So as always, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you. As always, it's not about you or me. It's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is a Lazaros 88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.